the first ever fly shop in Idaho, the first ever chairlift on a ski lift, the first person to put legs on a grasshopper fly pattern. And what about the first person ever to use a strike indicator? And the first ski resort ever in the world? What if I told you that we were heading to the place where all of these things happened first? And today we're going to share the magic behind the man who helped to create this thing and the stories of how this person eventually ran for president of the United States. Today I'm going to talk to the person who has more knowledge than most in this part of the country. And today we're also going to help you set up a trip to this magical sunny valley. This is the Wet Fly Swing Podcast, where I show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for that trip, and what you can do to give back to the fish species we all love. Hi, I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing Podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. I grew up around a little fly shop and have created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in this country. I've also interviewed more of the greatest fly anglers than just about anyone in the world. Terry Ring, owner of Silver Creek Outfitters, and a man who has immersed himself in fly fishing for his entire life, takes us into Ketchum and Sun Valley, Idaho. You're going to find out where you can go to get dry fly action. You're going to get an amazing resources on visiting this area and how to know where to fish. And you're also going to find out about our big trip to this area this fall with the Euro School. We've got one spot that's open right now that just popped open, so we're going to talk about that as well. And you know this is big because we got Pete Erickson and Bret Bishop who will be leading the Euro School. So if you want to get in on this, you can do that. I'll follow up at the end. Shoot me an email. And we're also going to find out how Hemingway, the railroad, the Nature Conservancy, all these events and people converged in this area and helped make it what it is today. All right, we're working on our PhD in fly fishing with a minor in history. Here he is, Terry Ring from Silver Creek Outfitters. How you doing, Terry?
Morning, Dave. I'm doing great, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on here. We've got quite a bit going on. I'm excited about talking to you today because we've been working with Pete Erickson and we've had Bret Bishop on the podcast, and we're doing this really cool Euro clinic, kind of our school this next year, or actually this year. It's coming up this year, and so we got that going. And this is these are your guys, right? They guide for you. So I want to talk about that a little bit on the Euro, but just in general, I want to talk about this part of Idaho, South Central Idaho, and what you have going here. But before we get into all of that on the Euro School and some of your fishing, let's take it back on the shop because you have this great fly shop. Talk about. I want to get into the fly shop, but how did you first get into fly fishing? Kind of what's your first memory there?
Well, very early memories. I was told I was a very impatient kid when it came to anything but fishing. So I was very passionate about fishing, and some of my very earliest memories were fishing. So my dad was a fly fisherman, grew up in Montana, made his own rods and tied his own flies, which is what you did back in that day. And he shared that with me at a young age. And so I started tying flies when I was probably 7 and started fly fishing about that age with a cane rod and rubber hip boots. So I have to thank him for that.
Wow. Yeah. So this has been a full lifelong thing here. So let's take it back a little bit, fast forward to the shop. When did you realize like you were thinking like there was going to be a fly shop?
The store started in the early 60s. I didn't start it. So it's the store that I have now is likely the longest continuing operating fly shop in the state of Idaho.
Oh, amazing.
Probably the first one.
Huh.
And it started by a man named Dick Alfs. And he literally started the store with a bare hook, which would have been mustad at the time, some thread, fur, and feathers, and head cement. And he tied flies and sold them out of a very small retail store. And then he had that store until 1979. I was actually hired as a guide in 1979 when he sold the store partway through the year. So that's 25 years or 50 years ago now.
Wow.
And I really wasn't looking to be in the fly shop business. I enjoyed guiding when I was in college, enjoyed the business, enjoyed the people, and didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. And then this opportunity to become a partner in the store that Dick started presented itself, and I bought a small piece of it, and I've been there ever since. So it's been a long,
Wow.
long time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And what was his name, the original owner, founder?
Dick Alfs. It was called Dick Alfs Fly Shop.
Dick Alfs Fly Shop. Wow. And was it at the same location?
No, we're currently in the third location. The first location was a very tiny shop. He moved it to about a 3,000 square foot space in the mid 70s. And then in 1994, I built a log building, the building that we're in now. It's about an 8,000 square foot building.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I see it. Yeah, it's amazing. So it's really beautiful. Yeah. And so now you guys are right, and you're right on 75, right in Ketchum, right downtown?
5th and Main, Ketchum, Idaho.
That's it. And are there any other fly shops around the area?
There are 3.
Okay.
There are 2 more in Ketchum and 1 down in Peekaboo.
In Peekaboo, right on. This is awesome. Okay, so there's some history here, and maybe let's just touch on that a little bit. Do you know Dick? What did he love? Did he have a specialty? Was he into dry flies, or did he kind of do it all?
He was an artist.
Artist.
And he really, back in the 60s, fly patterns were much simpler than they are now. And learn every fly that was popular. And so not the broad assortment that we have now. He was a talented fly tyer and cook and gardener and wing shot and hunter. I mean, he was a real Renaissance man. And he tied all different kinds of flies. Nymphs weren't as big back in that era. It was more probably dry fly.
Yeah.
And he is probably the first person to put legs on a grasshopper. And he used pheasant tail that he probably shot in southern Idaho and used some of the pheasant tail feathers and tied a knot in it and looked very similar to what Dave Whitlock became known for.
Oh, yeah.
It was called the Dick Alfs hopper. And I think it predated Dave's hopper.
Okay, and that's Alfs. How do you spell that? A-L-F-S?
A-L-F-S.
Yeah, Dick Alfs grasshopper. There you go. Okay, well, we'll try to look up some of this on Dick. So this is great. So you have this history. Do you think about that when you're in the shop on a daily? Do you think about because that goes way back. I'll bet you there's not too many shops, like you said, one of the first, maybe the first in Idaho that are this old. Do you still feel that history when you think about that?
I don't think about it often, but when I do, or when I tell the story, or when I'm asked about it, I'm really proud of it. And it is quite a long history, and it is something to celebrate.
Nice. Well, today I wanted to give people a primer on, you got Ketchum, which you hear a lot about, the Sun Valley, which is a huge name you hear a lot about, right? A lot of the famous people that travel to Sun Valley and all that, but. And just Idaho and where you are, I want to give people paint the picture because we're going to be heading there, in October for the Euro Clinic / school. And so Bret and Pete are going to be leading this. But I want people to have an idea of the area, not just Euro, nymphing, but just kind of everything. So where would you start when somebody maybe is calling you on the phone and they're thinking about doing a trip this year or next? Where do you start with that? What do you ask them, or how do you tell them how to build that trip?
Well, you have 2 questions there. One is kind of the history of what is Ketchum and Sun Valley. So I'll start with that.
Yeah.
And Sun Valley really was the brainchild of Averell Harriman, who owned the Union Pacific Railroad. And he was exposed to skiing in Europe. And he wanted to bring a European-style ski resort to the United States. And it had to be near a spur line of the Union Pacific Railroad because the target audience was passengers for his railroad. He hired an Austrian count, to come out and scout the Union Pacific lines, and traveled all over the West. He went to Colorado and some other places. He wound up in Boise, Idaho, and was directed to come up to Ketchum. And there was no Sun Valley at the time. Ketchum was kind of a mining town, as well as a place where we raised a lot of sheep back in that day. And it was a big winter. He arrived in January. And within that year, 1936, he acquired 3,000 acres. He designed, built, and opened the Sun Valley Resort on December 23rd of 1936, all in 1 year.
Wow.
And, kind of an improbable time. The rumblings of war were starting in Europe and so on. And so it opened 36, 37 was the first year. And it was also the first place that they had a chairlift. It was invented here.
Oh, really? The first chairlift in the country?
In the world was invented in Sun Valley. And Union Pacific engineers took a transport that they had in Brazil for bananas and adapted it to a single passenger chairlift.
Amazing.
And so a lot of innovations. Averell Harriman, shortly thereafter, was tapped for public service and wound up working for Roosevelt in the Lend-Lease program, went on to be governor of New York for 2 terms, ran for president a couple times.
Wow.
Distinguished, very long distinguished citizen. So there's a lot of history there. So that's the founding of it. Ketchum, because it was the first ski resort, and that's why they named it Sun Valley. And his marketing department or a marketing person that he hired hated the cold and couldn't imagine why anybody would want to go skiing. It was from West Palm Beach. He said, that's stupid. And so he wanted to call it a name that didn't sound cold. So they called it Sun Valley. And it is amply named because we get a lot of sunshine here.
You get a lot of sun, so that's a cool thing. You get, because you're on the kind of the east side of the mountains, right? You get a lot. You're on the rain shadow side. And
Ketchum, by definition, since it was the first ski resort, was really the first mountain town.
Wow, that is awesome history. I'm glad you went into that, Terry. That's we always love the history here, whether it's fishing or outdoors or skiing or anything. We know there's definitely lots of people who ski, and fish. Do you find, like, here's a question for you, what percentage of people do you think that you talk to are both skiers, snowboarders, and they're kind of anglers?
It's a very high percentage. I'd hate to put a number on it, but
it's a lot.
We're a community that's a lifestyle, and a lifestyle could be hiking, it could be snowshoeing, it could be mountain biking, skiing, any one of a number of outdoor activities, but a big part of that lifestyle is also fly fishing.
Yeah. Good. So we got that chunk. And so Sun Valley now is, it's right there, just minutes away, right, from Ketchum. You just kind of drive up the highway and you're there.
They're basically contiguous. And Sun Valley is a little bit of a faux city. There's not really, they have their own government and so on there. But there's not a business district really in Sun Valley. It's just a resort. And when they built the resort, they wanted to have their own municipality. So they created that.
I see. There you go. So if you're getting food and groceries, you're coming in to Ketchum to get all that stuff.
Ketchum's a support town, you bet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk fishing a little bit on the area. So we're going to be hitting, I believe, the Big Wood, but there's a bunch of other rivers out in that area. So I guess maybe the second part of that question I asked you, somebody's calling you on the phone and saying, gosh, I've never been here before. Where do I start? What do you tell that person?
Well, I wouldn't answer. I'd start with a question, and it might be, how much fishing have you done?
Yeah.
How much experience do you have?
Yeah, let's start there. Let's just say I'm a person that has over, I've got 12 years of fishing experience, and I'm feeling pretty good about everything, but maybe I have some struggles still.
I'd ask them, what they want to accomplish out of the day. I'd try to qualify it and see what they want, and see if it's something that we can provide, and then try to match the right guide with that person's desire is probably the key. And then we've got a variety of guides from 2 world champions to some college age kids that are passionate about fishing. So you want to make sure that you match the right guide with the guest. And the thing that I tell most people, and I strongly believe this, is that, I'll take the reservation and I'll put down guide's choice. And we have a number of places that we fish around here. And our guides always call. We had 97% of our guides made contact with their guest at least a day before the trip last year. And so they would call you and say, hey, Dave, I want to introduce myself. We're fishing together tomorrow. And what does a day look like? Well, I want to learn how to Euro-nymph. All right, great. Well, we can work on that. My recommendation, if you want to do that, we've got a 3/4 day trip. The Wood River would be a good place for us to practice that technique. We'll look forward. And then they'll reconfirm the meeting time and place, ask about any allergies or physical limitations and that sort of thing, and kind of try to set the table in a professional way. And I call it aligning the expectations of the guest with the product that we're able to deliver.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And you have two, you mentioned Bret and Pete, who are going to be our guides on the trip we're doing. How did you manage to get two of these guys, the kind of the best in the world, not just Euro nymphing, but just all around, two world champions? How did you manage to get both these guys on the staff?
I'm just lucky.
Yeah, is that how it happened?
Bret, I probably met Bret when he was 4 or 5 years old. I started over on the Henry's Fork in 1975 with Will Godfrey over there, and I'm from Boise and graduated high school and was really I would have, as Will said, I know you'd pay me to work for me for someone, but I'm going to pay you a little bit anyway. And I went over to Island Park for my college years and spent a lot of time. And Will was a great influence in my life. And I was in an era where there were a lot of very famous fly fishermen around. Swisher and Richards and Ernie Schwiebert and Mel Krieger and Andy Puyans, and the list goes on. And I was able to meet and learn and from people like that, as well as to read a lot of their books and articles and so on. So it was really a magical time. And Bret, I knew as a little kid, knew his mom and dad. And then his mom, they got divorced, and his mom moved to Ketchum, and he went to high school here at the community school. And both of them teach in Boise, Idaho. So the Bret I've known for a long time and has a connection with the community and loves to guide. He's an outstanding individual. And then pretty much met Pete through Bret.
Squala Fly Fishing, combining advanced materials with fishing-focused, purpose-built design. Squala waders, jackets, shirts, pants, and insulation are made for us. To help Wet Fly Swing listeners right now, Squala is offering a 10% discount on your next order. Just visit squalafishing.com and use the coupon code WetFlySwing10 at checkout. That's Squala, SKWALA. Gear for us, the serious angler. As we kick off another big season of fly fishing, I'd like to connect you with Drift Hook to make sure your fly selection is seamless this year. Drift Hook has everything from nymphs to dry flies, hoppers, streamers, and of course, their Euro nymph fly kits. You can order right now at drifthook.com. That's DRIFTHOOK, drifthook.com, and use the code SWING at checkout to get 15% off your first order. And you mentioned Will Godfrey and Swisher Richards and Andy Puyans. Say that again. It's Puyans. We've heard that name before. How do you pronounce that again?
Puyans, Puyans.
Who was he? Was he similar to Mel Krieger and something? What was his claim to fame?
He had a fly shop in Walnut Creek, and he was a passionate fisherman, fly tire, inventive angler. I believe he was the first person to use a strike indicator. And so he was an innovative angler. And I met those guys. He would always bring a group up from California and do fly fishing schools as Melwood. So there were always these introduction to fly fishing week-long classes that people used to have time for. And, that's the way you learned is you booked a vacation and you went up, and I think they did it at Elk Creek Lodge. They had a big lawn area, pond there, as well as they go out on some of the streams like the Henry's Fork and so on with guides and fish and try to really immerse themselves into the sport.
Yeah, that's it. And you have a lot of that history of back and being around some of these big names in fly fishing. And as you look back on it now, you look where you are, the changes kind of fly fishing. Have you seen, how is it different now than then? Are there big things you think about, or is it pretty much the same thing? They're just on our phones more now.
It's changed so much. There's been just an absolute explosion in the tackle that's available. I think one of the biggest things that changed, back in the 70s, we were just starting to get graphite rods, the middle of the 70s. And so before that, it was fiberglass and cane. And so the tackle has changed a lot and made it more functional and much easier to cast. Same thing with the clothing. the waders and that we wore back, the most common wader back for the fishing guides at that time was seal dries, which were latex.
Oh, yeah.
And there were very few choices in wading shoes. My first job with Will Godfrey was when he finally hired me. He was a professor at Boise State in the summer, operated his fly shop at Island Park in the summer, and the shop was open from Memorial Day weekend to Labor Day weekend. Nobody fished in the fall back then. Everybody went hunting, and part of it was we didn't have the clothing and the waders and so on to keep us comfortable. It was seal dries and Hodgman canvas waders, and there were really limited choices that were available. And then the evolution, first into neoprene, which was quite a step up, the flexibility and comfort of, if you can call neoprene waders comfort, they were comfortable in the day. And then Gore-Tex, when it came along, and then companies like Patagonia with their innovation in synthetics, and a little bit of a switch back to wool these days. But the tackle, the clothing, and the techniques have changed tremendously in the last 50 years.
Yeah, it has. It's been amazing. And I love that transition with the waders. So do you remember when those seal dries were? So what was before seal dries? Were they just wading wet in the winter?
No.
No.
I think
they weren't that badass.
I'm 68. You're going back before I was born.
Okay, so I'm going too far back. Yeah, I'd have to talk to my dad on that one, I think, and ask him. But I feel like, I remember, I don't remember, but I remember my dad talking about, that time. And I remember neoprene waders, for sure. I had tons of neoprene waders were great. Actually in the wintertime, neoprene waders were awesome because they kept you super warm.
It was probably canvas and rubber. And Hodgman was probably the big manufacturer back in the day.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Well, so, back to the stream. So you guys were going to be on the Big Wood for this trip we're doing, but talk about the other area, the other streams that people could fish if they come into, that part of Idaho.
Southern Idaho sits on a very large aquifer. Henry's Fork is a spring creek. Henry's Lake has springs and so on. And so the Snake River Plain is a very large aquifer, and you've got the Idaho Desert to the south. As you come up into the valley where Ketchum is, it's a bit of an alluvial plain, and we're coming up into the Big Wood River. We're on the edge of the mountains, just north of us, SNRA, Sawtooth National Recreation Area. Idaho has 2.4 million acres of roadless wilderness area, and we're very rich in the number of options that we have. We don't have a lot of big rivers in our area like they have in Montana, but we've got the Big Wood and tributaries. We've got the Salmon River over the hill being Galena Summit. It's about 45-minute drive to the headwaters of the Salmon, and drains a very large wilderness area, gains momentum fast, longest undammed stream in North America. And then we've got the Big Lost River, and we've got rivers that the Salmon River flows basically north and east, and it goes over and goes into the Snake. We've got a unique situation north of us. There's actually 3 rivers that are all part of the Big Lost. So the Big Lost flows southeast, goes into the Idaho Desert and disappears. The next mountain range over is the Little Lost River, and it flows southeast, goes into the desert and disappears. And then north of that is Birch Creek, which is separates Idaho and Montana on the Bitterroot Range there. And it's a small spring creek, very small fish, but beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
And it flows southeast in the Idaho Desert and disappears. The rivers that flow northwest go into the Salmon, Snake, Columbia, and so on. And then we've got Silver Creek to the south, and Silver Creek flows into another river called the Little Wood that goes down and makes its way into the Malad and the Snake.
And Silver Creek, is that more of a famous river, or maybe the Big Wood, just for this? Is it a spring creek, or there is some technical type fishing there? Maybe describe that. Which are the real, maybe the big names that people would be knowing about or wanting to hit?
Well, the store's name is Silver Creek Outfitters, and it was named because Silver Creek was the most famous stream around. And it's been famous for a long time, famous for its dry fly fishing. It's changed a lot in the time that I've been here. It's changed a lot in the last 20 years in terms of the impact of development, changing agricultural practices. And spring creeks in the West have all declined with the decline of, basically flood irrigating. So when they were diverting water out of the Big Wood is basically the primary water source for Silver Creek. It goes down, hits an alluvial fan, subs out. But when they brought ag to the valley down there, they diverted Big Wood water into the Silver Creek watershed, and it was all flood irrigated. So Silver Creek would have benefited from that flood irrigation and gained flow because of the footprint of man there, basically. And then as we develop property and we replace ag ground with homes, as well as go to overhead sprinkling, it just changes the flow, changes the amount of water that charges the aquifer. Mm. And so Silver Creek was very famous. There's pictures of people camping out on opening day down there in Model A's with canvas tents and so on, and was a very well-known fishery, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on. Great dry fly fishing. It was primarily a rainbow fishery when I got here. Mm-hmm. Less than 4% of the fish on Silver Creek were brown trout at the time, and dry fly and tremendous hatches and so on. And so with ag and siltation and a variety of things, the hatches haven't been as plentiful. Mm. And with the fish population has changed a bit, and there's probably as many brown trout or more brown trout in Silver Creek now than there are rainbows.
Mm. Gotcha. So big changes there. And is that still a place you could go and hit a hatch? And are there still some hatches going on if you hit it right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And just add water. When the West goes into droughts, and I've been here, I guess, 45 years here since 79. And during that time, we've seen big snow years and low snow years. And where we have drought cycles, it impacts the conditions on Silver Creek tremendously and can impact the fish population down there. And so I always say in the West or here, just add water. It fixes a lot of things.
Which is the snowpack mainly. Is that looking pretty good this year? I mean, will you see the effects of a big snowpack this year and you'll see better fishing this year?
Yes. We're coming off of a good snow year last year. And this year, our snow didn't come till late, but we've got good snowpack. It should have good river conditions everywhere this summer.
That's great to hear. Okay, so there's going to be water there. And then if we take it back to, that person, maybe dry fly is the thing. We want to come in there and hit dries. So what would you tell that person? What are the options there? You obviously have Silver Creek. Are there other options? Are there are there big hatches anywhere else?
Yeah. We've got good dry fly fishing and, certain times of the year all over. Mm-hmm. And so it could be the Salmon River. It could be the Big Wood, Silver Creek, Big Lost River. We're an area that's got excellent dry fly fishing. Probably the most intense hatches are going to be on a stream like Silver Creek or some of the tailwater fisheries like the Big Lost and the Lower Big Wood and so on.
Okay. And you guys would have just your typical hatches everybody would know about, whether that's or do you get is there a stonefly, salmonfly hatch, or how does that look?
Silver Creek really doesn't have one. There are a few stoneflies you see down there, but I've never seen them prolific. The Big Wood River is pretty clean and has a stonefly, not too many salmon flies, but more golden stones and little yellow sallies and that sort of thing. The Salmon River's got an epic salmon fly hatch as well as golden stones and a whole variety of good hatches up there.
Mm-hmm. And are people coming there? Do you find a lot of the people coming in to the shop, or you're getting a nice mix of the Sun Valley where there's a lot of new anglers, or do you find people are really dedicated, lots of experience, or is there a mix?
It's a mix. We've got an area where we get a lot of second homeowners and some tourists, but more, our core customers more somebody that's an owner rather than a renter. And that they will make fly fishing part of their summer experience. And it's interesting. I think Al Kite wrote a book a long time ago. It was an introduction to fly fishing book. It was called Fly Fishing Simple to Sophisticated. And I thought that was such a great title. And I've used that throughout the years. And I had one customer one time that had a second home here, loved to fish, did not bother learning how to tie a fly on. And so he fished one fly. He kept the fly rod strung up in the back of his classic Wagoneer, and this is back in probably the 80s and 90s. The old classic ones, it's what they drove here at the time. And I think he fished an elk hair caddis. And he would go out to Warm Springs, which is a tributary to the Wood. It's a small stream. And if he lost his fly or his fly came untied or something like that, he would quit fishing and come back to the store and have us buy one fly and have us tie it on for him. So I don't think you can get more simple than that. But that's all he wanted to get out of the experience. He really loved to fish. He fished a lot, but he just didn't want to bother learning anything else. That's what he got out of it. And then other people take it to the degree of, say, a Bret Bishop and a Pete Erickson, where they are students of the sport. And this is the thing that I admire so much about all of the Team USA that I've met. Every one of them is extremely humble. And so they're humble. They're teachers. They will teach fly fishing. Both Pete and Bret are school teachers. And they're always willing to learn from other anglers. And I think that's one of the things that competitive angling has done has evolved not only tackle, hooks, and so on, but it's evolved techniques to where we became international in fishing. And, going and competing in Bosnia or Tasmania or New Zealand or Eagle, Colorado or Jackson, Wyoming or Italy, you meet these anglers that have evolved there and developed local techniques that work for them. And it just opened up a whole new world for how to be an effective angler.
Yeah, it has. It's pretty awesome to see. We've done a number of different episodes on Euro nymphing, whether that's Pete, Bret, and Devin, and just I always love it because these guys are they're at the top of the game, and like you said, a lot of these innovations are coming from the competitive fishing. We know how popular Euro nymphing is. Do you guys find that with the nymphing, if people are coming there to fish, is it an equal nymphing and dry flies, or is it kind of one heavier than the other?
It depends on the person. One of our guides, Ewald Graber, fantastic angler, but he loves to fly cast. He's a master fly casting instructor. He's a musician. He's a real talent. And he's over in Slovenia right now, leading some groups over there. He's from Austria. And he goes just to that part of the world for a couple months in the spring and takes groups over and so on. He couldn't care less about Euro nymphing because fly fishing to him isn't necessarily just about catching fish. For him, the art of the fly cast is so important that having a fly rod with a fly line and a fly leader on it is what he wants to do. And so it goes all over the place, and that's one of the things that there's so much personalization or individuality among fishermen that you can develop your own preference. As long as you're happy, fine.
That's it. Yeah, as long as you're happy, I totally agree. Well, we mentioned we are doing this trip, the Euro School trip with Pete and Bret. It's going to be in October, and we're going to be hitting the Big Wood. Maybe talk about that. I'm not sure. Are you a Euro nymphing master as well, or do you know much about it? Do you let Pete and Bret just take the lead on that, and they kind of basically cover everything?
Well, I'm not a master at anything. So, certainly not in those guys' league. I make a practice of trying to fish with Bret at least once or twice a year because I always learn something with him. And he's just a gentleman. He's so much fun to be with.
What's that like? Let's just paint the picture. So you're out with Bret on the water. What is that like being guided by somebody, kind of like Bret at that level?
I learned from him. It's just, he's so good. And I'm looking at, working on my Euro nymphing technique or Tenkara or if they're rising drives, but we basically just fish together and, we'll take turns and he'll coach me. Tiger Woods has got a coach. Michael Jordan had a coach. So I think that fly fishing, and that's one of the things that we've done with our guides too, is we've tried to provide opportunities that are coaching to try to help build their skills. And as I said, the thing that I really admire about people like George Daniels and Bret and Pete is they are always willing to share what they know. They don't hold anything back. And I've known guides in some areas that think that their power is in what they know that you don't know. And I don't like that attitude. I like people that are willing to share. And I think that the culture of sharing and teaching and trying to continue to learn and develop skills to help, whether it's just your own personal angling or whether you're a professional guide and you're trying to develop additional skills so that you can be a better guide.
Imagine your perfect cast in the pristine waters of Bristol Bay, the heart of the Alaskan wilderness. Togiak Lodge sits in this unique paradise, offering unmatched fishing amidst breathtaking landscapes. Envision yourself right now amidst nature's best, with every fish narrating its own epic tale. You can visit togiaklodge.com right now. That's Togiak, Togiak. Your story woven into the fabric of Bristol Bay, where every cast is a memory, every fish is unforgettable. Yeah, that's a perfect point. I think that whether it's, guiding or really anything, I think getting around the right people, right? And we've heard that tip talked about a lot where, hey, one of the biggest tips that we've heard from our guests is, get a guide, because it's going to save you a lot of, it's going to lower the learning curve. It's going to save you a lot of time, just like we're doing. So for this Euro clinic, the school that we have going, I can't think of a better couple of people to have to teach, the folks going on this trip how to do it, to be right there with them, to basically say, hey, here's how to cast, here's how to do all this. So yeah, we're excited about this. When we come in October, we're going to be coming in fishing the Big Wood. What does that look like? If somebody asks the question, hey, where do I fish the Big Wood? How do you coach them on that? Or do you just kind of go pull off on the highway and go wherever?
Well, we really try to be forthcoming with good information. And we put out a fishing forecast religiously every week during the summer and try to make it, no smoke and mirrors. It's just, this is the honest conditions of what is going on. There's been cases where we've told people, frankly, the fishing's not very good. We're being impacted by the heat dome over the Northwest, and we've got limited fishing and don't fish in the afternoon, and try to be completely honest with it always. And then the other thing that we enjoy doing is somebody comes in and says, I'm new to the area or I'm passing through. Where do you recommend? That we have a map, an access map to the Big Wood River that has the Blaine County Recreation District put it out, and they researched all of the easements on the river that allow angler access, angler and equestrian in some cases, and pedestrian. And so, as in most communities in the West, a lot of the land along the river is private. That's where it was homesteaded or that's where it was deeded. And so the county actually had tremendous foresight as subdivisions started to be proposed here to require it, dating back way into the 70s, require fisherman easements. So there's easements all up and down the valley. Blaine County Recreation District researched them and put out a map that has all the access points and a description of how to get there. So we can circle places on a map that have explicit instructions on where to go. So it's very transparent and there's really no secrets. We run out of secrets in a fly shop in about 2 seconds. And so we'll share as much as we can with people and try to get them, a good experience out there.
Yeah, good. And that map, they can grab that. Where can they get a hold of that map?
We have it at the store.
At the store, okay.
Yeah, and it's actually on our website.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, they could pull it up on the website and if they're doing research.
Yeah, it's probably under resources. We'll find it here.
Resources, yeah, exactly.
River maps, I see it. Okay. Yeah, we'll get a link out to that. I see it right here. Yeah, Ketchum access map, Wood Valley. This is great. Perfect. Okay, so we've got a couple of, there's more than just, you guys have a few maps here. So that somebody can grab that. They can see some public places they can kind of jump in. And then as far as the hatches, again, you have the report, which is great. What do you think would be one time if they're thinking dry fly fishing that would be the time to come? What would you recommend if they want to, is there a better time than others?
I think that the best dry fly fishing is going to be sometime between the third week of June and the middle of August. And probably the prime time for dry fly fishing in the American West is going to be the heat of summer, the 15th of July through the 15th of August, that 30-day window. It depends on the year, it depends on the weather, it depends on the water flow and so on, but that's pretty safe. And then as we get into the fall, there are some good hatches, but the hatches tend to wane a bit in the fall. But there's still dry fly fishing throughout the year, just maybe a narrower window.
Narrow window. Yeah, that's right. And I think that's why we were planning the Euro School kind of in that October, because there could still be some bugs, some hatches, but it's a good time to hit the nymphing. Is that the situation on the wood? That's a nymphing wise, that's a decent time to hit it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always good. That's the one thing that Bret has taught me. They're always eating something.
Right.
And just trying to figure out what they're eating. He'll make 2, 3, 5 casts and change flies. And so he's always, whether it's more weight, depth, longer leader, shorter leader, smaller fly, bigger fly, he's just constantly searching for what they're eating because they're eating something. He just needs to get the right fly in front of them.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the great thing. Some people have said it's kind of a joke sometimes, but Euro nymphing is too easy, right? You can catch too many fish on it. Like it's almost against the, should be against the law, right? It's too easy. I don't find that to be true. Do you think there's any truth in that?
I think people that criticize nymph fishing don't have the concentration to fish nymphs or haven't bothered to learn how to fish them.
That's a good point. I love that. Well, what about hunting? I love hunting. I'm not a huge hunter, but I definitely love it. You guys have a hunting segment here on your website. Has that always been part of Silver Creek?
We're not just a fly shop. We're really kind of a lifestyle type store. We sell men's and women's apparel and footwear and stuff that you could wear out to a nice restaurant, as well as the outdoor clothing as well. We have a hunting department. Going back to the early days of Dick Alfs Fly Shop, he started selling guns, even out of his little tiny shop. And so when I became involved in it, it was a gun shop with a lot of fly tying material and a good fly selection and fly shop, very complete. So our hunting department is very important. Again, it's part of the lifestyle. The people that choose to come to Sun Valley have got an active lifestyle that it could include shooting sporting clays. It could include bird hunting. We're seeing a lot more people, young people, take up the sport of hunting. And I really credit that to Steve Ranella and Meat Eater, where it's a whole process that he has promoted, from hunting and researching and going out and actually taking an animal to how you process and prepare and serve that as food. So it's really what's more locally grown, organic, free range than a cow elk.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't get better than that.
We're seeing men and women do it, young couples, and female participation is exploding.
Yeah, you're seeing that. That's great. And you attribute that to, just more access and more the younger folks just seeing it out there, whether it's the Meat Eater or other, there's just more resources. Do you think that's what it is? It's not just you learning from your dad?
I think so. Hunting was declining for a number of years, and now it's turned around. And as we move further from the farm and into the city, we didn't have people to teach us anymore. And so Meat Eater and kind of this whole migration of people from other parts of the world into states like Idaho and Montana coming, and there's, and social media probably plays a part on it too, to where there's so much access to all the imagery that's associated with it.
Yeah, I love it. We had this conversation on a recent episode with the founder of Hooké company up in Quebec, Fred. And it was really awesome because he talked about the same thing you're talking about, how there's a lot of younger people up there coming into it. But he talked about how he does a lot of video production and how he doesn't show the kill shot on the video. You know what I mean? And it resonated with me because I don't like to see that either. I don't watch much hunting videos, but I don't need to see an animal getting killed. It's more the hunt. Do you feel like that's part of the, I don't know, is there overlap? Do you think that says a lot? Do you think that's also the way it is in Idaho and places out there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that people are showing the kill. They might see the trophy.
Yeah.
But they want to share that. But a lot of it, if you look, most of it is about the quest.
Yeah, the Quest. That's it. God, that's amazing. Well, Terry, I want to take it out of here in a little bit, but any other thing we want to shed light on Silver Creek Outfitters? Anything you have going that we haven't touched on today that we missed?
I think we've covered a lot. I've enjoyed our conversation and look forward to hearing the podcast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, you're not going to get off that easy, Terry. We got a couple more for you as we get out of here. This is going to be, and I want to touch on it because this is important for us. You mentioned a little bit on the conservation. We always try to focus on conservation on everything we do, but this is kind of our conservation shout out segment. And today it's basically kind of presented by Trout Routes. You mentioned also that the opportunity with mapping. Trout Routes is one of those on your phone things where it's really easy to find those public places. So big shout out to Trout Routes if folks don't know of it. They were actually you mentioned hunting. They were just acquired by Onyx. So now they're going to be even better than they were before. So shout out to Trout Routes. But here, the question for you is conservation. We mentioned some of these things going on in that area. What can somebody do? Is there a group you would highlight locally or that's doing some good work out there that we could support?
Well, I'll start at the beginning, and that is the Idaho Nature Conservancy, which Averell Harriman, as we discussed earlier, was the founder of the Sun Valley. Union Pacific owned it until 1964. They sold it to who became a great friend of mine, Bill Janz. Bill owned it to 1977. 76, 77 was a drought year, and Sun Valley was losing money, and it was kind of a forced sale. So the third owner was Earl Holding. Bill Janz and part of the Janz Railroad owned a 479-acre ranch, which is where the Silver Creek Preserve is now. Jack Hemingway was a fish and game commissioner, and when the Sun Valley Ranch came up for sale for $500,000 in 1977, that he went to the Nature Conservancy and asked them to buy it on behalf of the Idaho Fish and Game, with the idea that the state would appropriate money and the state would buy it from the Nature Conservancy. Well, the state never came up with the money, so the Nature Conservancy wound up with the Silver Creek Preserve, and that was really a key acquisition for them and a real trophy property for the Nature Conservancy as it was getting going. So that was really their first big acquisition in Idaho. And from that, they took more of a landscape view of the Silver Creek Valley and conservation easements in Idaho. First one was tributary to Silver Creek. Nature Conservancy had to have the law changed to be able to accept conservation easements and so on. So Nature Conservancy is one that's got a very rich history and something that's certainly worth continuing to support. All land trusts are children of the Nature Conservancy because it's the nation's largest land trust, but it's also the first land trust. So any land trust, local land trust that you have, their heritage is the Nature Conservancy. Mm-hmm. Nature Conservancy was helped start the Bigwood Land Trust, Wood River Land Trust. They had some properties that they were gifted that were really too small for them to manage. And so they were looking for larger properties. So the first gift to the Wood River Land Trust, also an important conservation group here in town, here in our area, it was the Lake Creek property, which was a small tributary to the Wood River, that was gifted to the Wood River Land Trust to get them started. And then recently there's one called Project Bigwood, to where a group of anglers has formed an organization. They're doing good things in terms of research. When you have a river like the Bigwood, you have a lot of different owners and different constituencies on there. Not all of them care about the river. Not all of them care about fishing. They like living on the water, but they may not understand, what a natural river habitat is and so on. So they're trying to coordinate different things between different government agencies, different nonprofits, as well as the private property owners along the river to try to protect, enhance, and be a voice for the trout and the wildlife that live along the Wood River as well. They're doing some good things. That's Project Bigwood.
Wow.
So those three are probably my top three right now.
That's so good. No, that's perfect. I love that. So we got some good groups to support there and a couple of random ones, and then we'll take it out of here, Terry. So we're going to be coming there in October, and there's going to be people that are going to be showing up, and we're going to get some food. Where would be a good place you'd recommend maybe some dinner out there in that area?
Well, the Pioneer Saloon's classic. That's one place I'd go. The Sawtooth Club, the Michelle's Christiana is one of my favorite restaurants. It's kind of a French restaurant, a little higher end, got a great bar. There's lots of good places to eat here. So if you want a recommendation, send them by the store and we'll direct them in the right place.
Yeah, we'll do that. I think definitely people will be stopping by, and we'll stop by the shop as well. And then the final one is on, I can't leave Sun Valley with the famous actors. I know there's, I think, Marilyn Monroe, and maybe there's a hotel up there where everybody stays. But do you have any encounters or any stories for us to leave us with on a famous encounter or anything that's gone on over there over the years?
We've had our share.
Yeah?
And if you want a humorous story, I had a kid working in the store at Christmas last year. And a woman came in and was doing some shopping, and she's been a customer of the store for a long time. And so he eventually asked her, we try to track transactions. He said, "Ma'am, have you shopped with us before?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "What's your name?" She said, "Moore." He looked at her and says, "What's your first name?" "Demi."
Oh, right.
He said, "Oh, how do you spell it?" So she spelled it for him. Demi. So Demi Moore was one.
Yeah.
And a little while later, we had another famous guest in the store that has lived here for many, many years. And husband loves to fish, Christopher Guest. This is Jamie Lee Curtis. So Jamie comes into the store, and we've known her for a long time. And she's doing her Christmas shopping. He had no idea who he was. He waited on Demi Moore and Jamie Lee Curtis all in the course of about 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Didn't know who either one of them were.
No.
Goes home for Christmas in Boise. He says, "Boy, you wouldn't believe my day. Have you ever heard of Demi Moore and Jamie Lee Curtis?" His parents made him watch Christmas with the Cranks and G.I. Jane.
Oh, G.I. Jane. I was going to say one of the two movies. So yeah, Christmas with the Cranks.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, Clint Eastwood.
Oh, wow.
Janet Leigh. Janet Leigh actually was a good customer of the store. She loved to fish. And there's been a rich history. And the way Sun Valley started marketing is they had this, I mentioned the name Sun Valley was the creation of a marketing genius. His idea for marketing was to invite celebrities. So there was the ski train that came up in the early years that would come up with celebrities from Hollywood. And, Lucille Ball, the Kennedys, we're very rich in history with very famous people that have been here. And they'd take photographs of them and release them to the press. So there would be always these press pictures of Groucho Marx skiing in Sun Valley. And so they use that. And Sun Valley has got a really rich history of celebrity visitors, and we pretty much leave them alone.
Right.
That's one of the reasons they like it here is they're the same person in the coffee shop as they are. We give them their space.
Yeah, that's good to know. So awesome, Terry. Well, I think we'll leave it there. I love that we ended on some a little bit of history, some conservation, some fun stuff here. So we'll send everybody out, like we said before. This is Silver Creek Outfitters at silver-creek.com. And I just want to thank you for all the time today and also helping us set up this trip with Pete and Bret for this big Euro school. This is going to be awesome, and excited to keep in touch with you as we go.
My pleasure, Dave, and we'll look forward to seeing you in October.
Can't wait to meet Terry at the shop this fall. Man, this is going to be great to walk in the store and connect with the crew down there. How about you? Mentioned this at the start, but we do have one opening that just popped out for the Euro School with Pete Erickson and Bret Bishop. We're going to be heading to this area that we just talked about. We're going to be focusing on nymphing and Euro nymphing from two of the best. So if you want to get in on this, just send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, and put Euro School in the subject line, and I'll let you know if we still have that availability. That's the best way to find out. Before we get out of here, please follow the show. This is the best way for you to get notified when that next episode goes live, so you don't miss any of the great content podcasts we have coming. The shop. We've got a big announcement that's coming up this summer. Wetflyswing.com/pro. You can go there and enter your name, and you'll be notified when this big event happens and when this launches. I'm talking to a few people right now about it. It's going to be the shop. It's going to be our place to connect. And we got lots of big stuff coming. So go there right now if you want to get information. We haven't opened the doors yet, but when we do open the doors to the shop, I'm excited to see you in there and to share what we have going, how we're going to take everything we have on this podcast to the next level. All right, I'm going to leave it there for the day. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you have a great afternoon, great evening, or great morning. And if you are flying on an airplane right now, hope you're enjoying your flight and you have a safe landing. All right, strap on that seatbelt. Get ready for the next one. Talk to you soon.